Hey everybody, I'm Susan Lindner, your host of the Innovation Storyteller Show. We are back with a different take on innovation from the way you always hear about it. We're going to be looking through the lens of the feminine today. And I'm not asking you to shut off your podcasting equipment at the moment. I'm asking you to tune in and listen. You have been asked as innovators to look into the future. You've been asked to look into the past and create some beautiful ideas from what's been done before. You have been asked to look laterally at your competition and maybe even disruptively about what could come next. But how many of you have taken the time or the opportunity to think about how you look at innovation through the lens of your own gender and the one around you? And I'm not just talking about gender in the narrowest sense of how our bodies look or how we're oriented, but rather the yin and yang, the opposing forces, the differentiated views of how creation comes into the world, including your own innovation as a source of creation. And so this is going to be a beautiful exploration today of how to think differently, sidestepping your normal lens and thinking about a different way of perceiving and executing innovation with my guest today, who is a scientist, a corporate scientist, an author, someone who is not from the United States, but has unique insights that she brings to the world of innovation. So I'm asking you to free your mind, to begin with a fresh look at how we innovate and how you personally decide to think about the source from which you create. So sit back, and who is a scientist turned marketer turned founder and now book author. So an innovator through and through, who is passionate about helping the world become a more joyful place with meaningful and sustainable solutions, especially when it comes to innovation. She is half French, half American, half scientist, half marketer. And yes, we know lots of halves, but as they say in French, when you love, you don't count. From her PhD in organic chemistry to her marketing expertise, innovation has been her love for more than 30 years. With a proven track record in Fortune 500 companies through her international journey, she has lived between Europe and the US and traveled the world. In 2018, she settled here in the US and created INNOVEVE, a consultancy in innovation whose mission is to embrace feminine energy for ultimate innovation. She also is the author of a book called Venus Genius, the female prescription for innovation, that was published in December 2020. Thank you so much for joining me, Fabienne. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Thank you so much, Susan. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you for this wonderful introduction. Wow.
So let's start at the very beginning.
No pressure.
No pressure whatsoever. This is an easy conversation. So start us from the beginning. When we think of feminine energy, you don't have to be a woman to experience this, right? Give us your definition of feminine energy. How does this work?
So, yes, it's not about men versus women. And the book, actually, I say it a couple of times because I want this to be clear. I'm not like the feminist, oh, yeah, I'm a feminist, I'm a woman, and men, but it's really about the energy. And we all have masculine and feminine traits and masculine and feminine energy. The masculine energy, and this goes to the from the brain, okay? We have similar brains between male and female. However, talking to neuroscientists, we saw that there are some differences that are statistical and explain that men have more gray matter, for example, so they go directly to the solution. They are problem solvers, decision makers, assertive, organized, focused. And women have more of the oxytocin, which is the cuddling hormone. And so they are more and more white matter, that is the ability to connect the dots and solve complex problems. We look at things differently, and the feminine energy from also the history is more chaotic. The man is more predictable and more organized, and only look at our bodies. They change, we have a lot of influences, so it's more chaotic. So what is interesting when you look into innovation is that, you know that in innovation you have two parts, the front end and the back end, okay? So the front end is you go from nothing, basically. You talk to the customers you want to innovate for, you develop ideas, you brainstorm, you pick some ideas, you develop prototypes, and then you refine this prototype to bring it to commercial solutions. What we do today in innovation, to your point, and thank you for asking the audience to think differently, because what happens today, because of a lot of things, the time and the budget constraints, we go very to the first part, the front end, and then we focus on the prototype and we pick something and we develop it into a solution. And this is how we are inundated by a lot of things that don't make sense, are not really neither sustainable or meaningful in our lives. Now, and this requires the masculine energy of doing things, solving problems, all the traits I said before. So if you look at the front end, it requires really this feminine energy. So what I did, I'm a scientist, I remember that all the time because I always functioned that way. So I listed all the skills that I thought were very important to be an innovator. And I've been an innovator in the academic world, in technology, in marketing, in the long-term innovation. So I saw a lot of aspects. And so when you innovate, you need some skills. I list the skills, and then I cross that with what I found in the literature, what is considered labeled feminine or not. And I ended up, and I have my little chemical formula that I describe in the book, which is when you practice empathy, nurturing, inclusivity, innovation, collaboration, and gratitude. Actually, collaboration is the catalyst. You get innovation that emotionally resonates with the consumers and brings money to the bottom line. So this is my entire theory.
I just want to, I just, sorry to interrupt you, Fabienne, but I just want to make that clear. So when you are experiencing innovation, right, when you are beginning to formulate these new ideas, what happens when you tie together the collaboration with the idea generation? What happens then?
Okay, so you have empathy. The empathy is to understand the customer needs.
Right.
And you need to spend there because as we were talking in another conversation, we were talking about all that. Men think that they know what women think. Well, not really. And you have really to put yourself in the shoes of the women. I always give this example of this French designer, the shoe designer, Christian Louboutin, who says, oh, when I design shoes for women, I think of men. I design them for men because they will be the ones having the pleasure to see women walking in them. What about us walking on this and ending up, in the emergency room or food surgery like I? Okay, so this is really empathy for that. Then you need to have inclusivity into the brainstorming. So you brainstorm ideas around the customer needs. You need this inclusivity. You need also the gratitude, and this one was less obvious, but when you do projects and you have different functions, it's important to be grateful for what the others bring. I remember having these groups where you have the marketers and the chemists working together at developing concepts and prototypes. And the marketer looking at the chemist in our little lab say, wow, it takes all that to just 1 little sample. Next time, I will be more thoughtful before asking for a sample for yesterday.
Right.
So gratitude for the others, intuition. This one is a big one. I love this one. It is not really feminine, by the way. We all have intuition. However, because of the social norms and constraints, intuition is considered this feminine thing, but serious, not business, not at all. Intuition is actually a very complex process that is happening in the brain when we let it settle, and it takes the different dots in all the information we have, and suddenly, wow, but the moment doesn't come from nowhere. It comes really from the brain. Okay, so intuition, because sometimes we spend too much, I'm sure you went through that, too much time analyzing, over-analyzing you have this paralysis at the end, and we don't go anywhere. So follow the intuition. And then when you have all that, you produce the collaboration. And then everybody works together towards a common goal. And the collaboration is really this interactivity and work and bringing the different skills to build something better, common together.
So this sense of intuition, I mean, I'm sure there are many of my listeners who feel like they've tapped into their own intuition in the past, right? There's a nagging problem, or maybe those customer surveys don't feel just right, or we're missing something about our product market fit or something along those lines. What is the prescription for how we can deploy a different means of thinking about a problem that perhaps we haven't in the past? How do we set up our own innovation process to kind of tap more into that intuition?
First of all, diversity, because we need to be exposed to different thinking. If you brainstorm around the same thing with the same people, you get the same thing, garbage in, garbage out. Okay. Now, if you have diverse and you start to process that, so you have the first step is really accumulating information. And the more exposed you are, this is why it's so good to travel. This is why living in another country is so important, because you really discover other ways. It opens your mind. So opening your mind, being open to new ideas, to new cultures, to new way of thinking, and then you accumulate all this energy and all this information. But then, and I know it's very difficult in this world, learning to do nothing from time to time, just let your brain rest. Why do you think you have the ideas in the shower, or while sleeping, or while walking? Because we don't force our brain to think. The brain, that never stops, but it works in the background. We have to leave our brain alone sometimes and let them process all the information and work unique. So the way we all process innovation and connect the dots is totally different. And this is what makes innovation unique. And this is how our intuition, in fact, you have accumulated so much information. Let me give you an example, because you were talking about the consumers. At some point, we were working, I was working on dish liquid, and we launched the Ultra line. Okay, so it's the concentrated line, so less water and so on, a lot of benefits, smaller bottle. And we launched it, and it's picking up, except in the Hispanic market. And some people say, oh, this is because they are too conservative and so on, and they don't want to. But some way it didn't make sense to conservative, but they are the ones, and especially the women, they usually walk to the store, they go and get, so order makes sense, and sense to me why they wouldn't welcome it. So then with leading consumer insights, we went to Los Angeles, where we had a lot of information there, and we went to different stores. And what happened is that the trade actually was the one who was not really with the program. They were lazy, so they left the bottles there, and the little ultras were either at the top shelf or below, so the consumers couldn't find it. So the reason was not that the end consumer was conservative, is that the trade didn't follow the instructions and so on. You see, we corrected that. It was perfect. And that this thing in my head that told me there is something wrong. It was because I had read a lot of studies about Hispanic people, about that I had visited some stores. So you see, you don't realize it, but your brain is connecting all that, and suddenly, oh yeah, I feel that.
But do you feel that's uniquely feminine?
No. So the point is exactly that. Some of the traits, for example, empathy, because of the brain, again, the chemicals and everything that's happening, is more feminine. Collaboration is more feminine too. However, intuition is not. We all have that possibility. However, as I said before, by the social norm, and women are more prone to use their intuition, men are more data-driven, because it's serious. Intuition is like a feminine thing. So it's some social and historical, but everybody has the same possibilities.
So I think it's fascinating, because part of storytelling is also dispelling the myths of what is true and what is not true, especially in innovation. And one of the things I'm dedicated to is kind of breaking this innovator hero myth, where there is one human being who is Superman who winds up inventing the thing and the world changes forever. And while someone is typically a catalyst for an idea, it's oftentimes because some other groundswell of pressure, right, has arisen before it. Other folks have tried and failed. They are not in the history pages. And then typically there's a team of people supporting the Steve Jobs of the world, the Bill Gates of the world, right? Even the Thomas Edisons of the world. I went to Thomas Edison's workshop in New Jersey, and you can tour it. And what you learn is that Edison had thousands and thousands of patents in his name, because part of the contract you signed when you came to work for Edison is that you gave up the rights to put your name on the patent, and those reverted to Edison. And so he is the one seen as like the great granddaddy of everything. And I was in a mastermind group last night. We were talking about the invention of the light bulb, right? The famous 10,000 failures prior to figuring out the light bulb. But it turned out it was an African-American scientist who had already written 2 academic papers on the proper filament size in order to create electric light. But Edison didn't reach across the aisle, to your point about diversity, to find out, to examine the academic literature, to look at someone who was a diverse voice who had already done that, and perhaps could have cut his innovation time in half, right? So collaboration doesn't have to look like also what we think it does, right? It doesn't have to be the guy sitting next to me. It can be paying homage to the people who came before us. It can be looking at failures and bringing them in to do the work together. It doesn't have to be Tesla versus Edison. There's a different way of doing it that, as you're saying, kind of comes with the feminine energy of innovation that looks different from the masculine energy of innovation.
This is quite fascinating what you just said, talking about the lonely hero and so on, because in the book, actually, I narrate how personally I evolved from a masculine energy to a feminine energy. I was brought up between 2 brothers. My dad was in the army. I was a scientist. So it was very difficult. And to a previous conversation, I had to behave like a man and use the masculine energy to survive. That's it. Okay, it was the rule. But then during my lifetime, luckily for me, I reconnected to my feminine energy, and I am far happier and more centered today. I thought about that and I said, this is interesting because it mirrors my professional life. When I was having my PhD, I was this lonely thing, the next Marie Curie, whatever. But I was more in that, the lonely and find I will be the hero and so on. And then as I evolved and reconnected with the feminine, I started to be far more open to others, collaborate more, and I saw all the benefits. So this is why it's interesting. When I wrote the book, I didn't expect, because it's a business book somewhere about innovation, I didn't expect to talk so much about me, but it was our lives, or personal and professional, or intricated. And it was fascinating how it was this parallel that I evolved, and the innovation needs this balance. And again, it's not, it's good, it's bad. We need different energies at different moments. Like we need different energies at the moment of the day. Energy is everywhere, and we have to use it wisely.
Yes. So let's talk about, for our listeners too, is how they could start thinking about doing things differently. What are some of the takeaways that you think about as we look at prototyping? Let's start for like the whole innovation schedule, right? We do ideation, we do prototyping, we try to get other people on board to help us scale, we test, and then we scale the successful prototype. Where are different ways that we can insert this feminine energy, or putting on maybe like a feminine lens, right? Just imagine yourself, listeners, of just putting on a different set of glasses that say, how could I look at this differently? How could I incorporate a couple more facets of the diamond than I have been to my process? What should we think about, Fabienne?
What I found extremely successful, and it was more at the end of my career, is to create those what I called hot groups. And it was inspired by somebody who was in the army, actually, in an association for innovation. These hot groups is like this task force. You have a lot of different names, but you put people together for 4 days in a room to create prototypes. You have some background work before, but what is extremely powerful about that is the diversity, because in the group included not only the marketers and the scientists, of course, to create new products, but I included finance, legal, safety. Who have legal in brainstorming? Oh, I say, yeah, because they are part of the team. So once we were done and we had a new consumers coming at night to look at the prototype, so it was iterative for 4 days. At the end, this is the team that owns the prototype, including legal. So legal then was our ally trying to make it work with the law and the constraints, instead of saying, oh, no, you cannot do that, which is the usual image we have about legal, which is wrong. So having people in the project, and yes, this is an investment, but it's worth it. Because I proved that when you do that, you actually gain time and save time compared to having everything in parallel, having the marketing do the concept, and then they go to do some samples, and then they go to consumers, and then we, oh my God, legal, I hope it will pass legal. See, so everybody being together and creating together, yes, it's an investment in time, but it's I found that priceless, and it applies exactly that formula, the empathy for the consumers, because they are with you. So you create something, and at night they are criticizing it in front of you. You hear directly from them right away, and then you go back. You take that, you go back. So really understanding their needs. And then the diversity, because you have all the functions, inclusivity, because everybody has a voice in the concept and the product. Remember scientists saying, oh my God, I didn't realize it was so difficult to write a concept. Every word is important. I say, yeah, the concept is not. So everybody participating, diversity, inclusivity, gratitude, as I say, for the other function and what they bring to the table, and collaboration, because we all have to work together towards this prototype, and we have to do it in 4 days. So I found that extremely powerful.
So what if I play devil's advocate and we think about, does this really work? Because I can hear some of my own clients in my head going, oh, we can't get lawyers in the room that early. They're just going to slow it down. They object to everything. Like, I need to move this out quickly. I have Q4 goals that I need to get this done. If I bring all these people in now, I understand the African proverb, right? If we go one, we go fast. If we go in groups, we go farther. True, but I need speed. This isn't helping me at all, this collaboration business. Like, that feels painful to me rather than expedient. What do you say to that, Fabienne?
I say that as a scientist, and I'm used to be challenged, especially as a woman. So I always put with facts. So what I did, we did 2 projects in parallel. One using the regular way, as I say, the sequential way and the classical way of developing a product. And the other one, we used that one. And we have the numbers. And at the end of the day, not only we have saved time and money, and everybody was on board. So actually the process better. And what was extremely important also is that as we were all together, as it's a innovation, being all together for 4 days, doing that as a team, you bring your own emotions there. You bring something more important, bigger, and people feel that. And the prototype we developed compared to another prototype developed the classical way scored higher on emotional benefits. So these are facts, okay? So, okay, it was one project, but there always no statistical. You can always push back, but try it.
Right. At a minimum, we should be experimenting even with our own process. What does it look like when we collaborate versus when we go alone? Yeah. I think it's also important. Most people think about storytelling in innovation as the concept of maybe getting in front of the CEO and the board and presenting the prototype, right? That's the pitch. That's the story I have to tell. But I always ask the question, how open are you to listening to the stories of everyone else, right? Are you open to the end user, of the consumer, of the employee for whom you're innovating? Have you collected their stories? Have you developed empathetic listening skills for them before you start not just creating the prototype, but thinking about the story you'll be telling next? Because there's nothing more powerful than walking into the board and saying, let me play you a couple of videos from man on the street interviews of our customers and what they say they want. And then let's talk about what they really feel they want. not just what they say they want, right? But when we actually move into an emotive realm, which is the next thing I want to talk about with you, is how do we discern between the discussions around the hard facts, the data, and the prototypes we need to create, right? And I'm talking prototypes in the broadest sense of projects, of
Yeah.
thinking, right? Even we're prototyping the way we think, especially with the inclusion of AI now. So how do we go from a data-driven approach constantly to incorporating, not disposing of, but incorporating more of the emotionality into the discussion? How do we do it?
I think we get rid of data are data, but this is how we use them. To your point, instead of saying, okay, oh, this is the X percentage of consumers think that, blah, blah, blah. Why don't you take that, but you go for ethnography? You go one day in the life of the customers, really being with them in their life. And I'm telling you, I did that. And it's extremely interesting to see. It's not, people don't say, you don't connect emotionally with consumers through numbers. You don't. So the numbers are great because they tell you, and the features, everything which is features. Okay, a dish liquid, obviously, a body wash, as I developed a lot. If it doesn't do the job, the car it doesn't run. Okay, fine, you don't have a product. However, why do we buy an iPhone? I'm not technically than another one. This is the genius of the emotional benefit that Steve Jobs put into all these bundles. All the elements know that the way he bundled that together and did this design around the brand that everybody's dying to have, and so on. This is the emotion. This is pure emotion there. So instead of bringing the emotions into a product at the end with the advertising and trying to reach consumers, then incorporate the emotions at the beginning. So understand the emotions of the consumers at the very beginning of the process. When you go, you talk to them how they feel. You are with them, and then you really understand what's happening. For empathy, I always tell the story. We were developing care products for the senior target. Okay, and I had hired a firm who had developed a suit that mimicked the effects of aging. So the Google, which will be there, the arthritis, the knees, everything. It was very well done by them. So we had a brainstorming session with one of these groups who have everybody in the room. And I asked for a volunteer to try the suit and perform the oral care. So we had the mock-up shop store, we had all the products, and you have this young marketer, 20-something, I want to do it. I said, okay, fine. So she tries the suit, she performed the entire process. And at the end, she was turning her back and she had like some trouble getting out, and she didn't turn right away. So what's happening? She turned around, she was crying. And she said, oh my God, I've been bullying my grandmother for so long. Of course, grandma, you can do that. Of course, you can do that. You don't try hard enough. And suddenly she was, oh my God. So this was the emotion. When you feel this emotion as a marketer, you don't develop the same product as oh, X% of senior people have difficulties doing that. Does it make sense to you?
Yeah, I'm so floored by the level of empathy suits, right, that exists now at the moment, right? I've seen them at fairs where they have like big, bulky police officers and firefighters who are simulating the experience of getting your period and the pain associated with that. And they're absolutely waylaid, right? They can't even stand up anymore, need to sit down from regular monthly cramps. And by the way, but if you don't know, right, you're expected to go to work, you're supposed to perform at your highest function, you're supposed to pretend that none of this is happening, right? It just doesn't even exist. We're certainly not going to talk about it, even though it happens once a month for roughly 40 years of your life. Yes. And you don't get to talk about it. Yeah.
But you described exactly that. Is you can say 50% or 70% of women experience pain during their periods. But oh yeah, but the day you experience the pain, you better understand what it is. So it's that the emotions, you have to feel them. You have to be there, and if you feel the emotion, create with emotion. Like my husband is a painter, he's an artist, and I'd say also, I describing the book, a computer can do what he does, but a computer cannot put on the canvas the emotions that my husband has, and people know it. They can tell this painting tells me this story. So when you put your emotions into something creative, you'll feel it.
It's a different world. Yeah. And so I also don't want to leave our listeners thinking that man rational, woman emotional. Like that's not what this is about.
No.
It's about turning on a whole other level of sensory perception to the challenges that you're trying to address. It's about turning on additional superpowers that if you allow yourself, that you can be exposed to deeper, more intuitive ways of thinking around the challenge that you're talking about. And I'm remembering an innovation consultant I met in Paris. He was Dutch, but he was responsible for the Always MaxiPad campaign at Procter and Gamble, not campaign, about the innovation. And so he had his entire team wear, all men and women wear Always MaxiPads for a week. I would like to know how many of my listeners would actively be willing to do that, thinking about their own products, but actively wearing them and going, this is uncomfortable. This really sucks. This makes me feel not confident. This makes me feel all these kinds of different ways, or super confident, who knows, right? And protected. Maybe that's part of the story. But just for one day to step into someone's shoes and be a recipient of stories, not just a teller of innovation stories, is so important. Yeah. So, Fabienne, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. I ask all of my listeners, all of my guests rather, a couple of questions before they leave the show. So I just want to make sure that you're leaving us with some strong advice. If you think about our Fortune 500 chief innovation officers and those who have innovation as part of their own mandates, what do you want them to do just a little bit differently when they go to work tomorrow, when they're thinking about the problems that they're working on? What's a new perspective they could bring with them to their challenges?
Most of the time, especially in the Fortune 500, when you want to innovate, you think processes, and we need processes. Well, of course, we need processes because innovation is creativity that sells, like I think Steve Jobs said. So you need to have processes, but focus on the humans. Really concentrate on the people you put in the innovation teams. They have to be passionate. They have to have a certain profile. They have to be supported. They have to be free. They have to feel safe. So creating not creating the innovation room with the coffee and the beanbags. It's not that, okay? It's really changing the mindset and make sure that the outliers are not criticized and not put down and okay, you have to behave like the others, but are rewarded for being a little bit crazy, for bringing something different that, hey, if you think about it, how to bring that crazy idea to something different and something unique. So dial up the humanity, dial up the craziness of the people, allow them to be who they are and bring that unique gift to the company.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask you my 3 hot seat questions. Do you think is the greatest innovation of all time?
The vaccine, to me, the concept of the vaccine is something that is absolutely amazing and that resonates with what happened lately. I think the fact somebody had the idea to put the virus into you to cure you is just like absolutely amazing.
And if there's an innovation team that you could have joined at any time in human history, which team would you have liked to have been on?
I'm not sure about that. I don't think about a specific team now, but I think I would have loved to be somewhere in Africa when you don't have a lot of money and you don't have a lot of resources and you invent out of necessity, creative because you don't have the resources. So in teams like that, I think I would have loved to be in such teams.
Yeah, with any particular outcome?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yes. For example, when you don't have electricity, I don't know what they had done with the bicycle and so on, and they powered some medical intervention with the bicycle. Like being creative when you don't have resources, to me, I think it's very intriguing and very rewarding.
Yeah, I think a lot of corporate leaders will say they feel that way a lot of the time, that they never get the budget
Well,
that they want for the things they want to
no,
build.
but of course you need some money, you need some resources. But again, coming back to your previous question, the budget is not everything. The mentality, the mindset, and the passion of the people, we can really beautiful and great things with sometimes little. But if you don't have the freedom and you don't feel safe and you are not rewarded.
And then what's an innovation you'd love to see in the world that hasn't been invented yet? Something that drives you crazy or something that would make you incredibly happy?
Suppress jealousy. Something that I would like to have a device that you just put onto somebody and you feel exactly the thing, the ultimate device for empathy.
Right. So we wouldn't need empathy altogether. We would just have a little signal that says, Fabienne sad, Fabienne in pain, Fabienne really happy, right? I'm sure all of our spouses would love this device and we might like it for them too. Fabienne, this has been wonderful. How can people get in touch with you if they want to reach you?
Okay, so my website, which is www.innovation, and Eve like Eve, EVE. I'm on LinkedIn also, Fabienne Jacquet, and got my book, Venus Genius, The Female Prescription for Innovation. It's on Amazon. And my email is Fabienne, Fabienne, at innoveve.com.
Fantastic. Fabienne Jacquet, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate this conversation.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you so much for having me.